What if? Those steps walking away was the last thing you ever heard. Sherry Lynn Emmons Maloney Brooks. I'm not joking. Research into the unwarranted murder of Vera Jo. Well, we'll get into her last name later. I found so many aliases outside of the famously known Sugar Babe that I simply couldn't believe it. Since Sherry allegedly gave the order for her cousin Danny Bixler and his girlfriend Nicole Peters to kill Vera Jo, we should begin the story here. Wait. Or we should begin the story with Charles Manson, a serial killer that's never actually murdered anyone. See, people often said Sherry ruled her home, husband, children, and family members the same way Charles Manson ruled his covenant. So conniving, she could influence any of them to kill at will, the same as Charles Manson, allegedly. Or we should start with the serial killer, William George Harris, who would kill women, then write on the walls using their lipstick. But truly, how does he, even Charles for that matter, connect back to Sherry. We would have to go back to the Jabot School for Boys, an orphanage conceived in 1909 by the Indiana Knights of Columbus and named for Pierre Jabot. The Jabot School for Boys was dedicated on October 9, 1921 in Terre Haute, Indiana, as a home for wayward boys. And I would agree. How much more wayward can one be to eventually lead a cult that will commit not one, but two of the most heinous murders in the United States history, and a serial killer? And what would you think if I told you that once the School for Boys branched off into allowing girls to enter, housed Sherry, Lynn, Emmons, Maloney, Sugar Babe, Brooks? I really tried to do this entire thing without a heavy emphasis on Sherry Brooks. Because when I do stuff like this, I always put myself in the shoes of the victim, of the person who lost their life in the story. And I just imagine and I start seeing things from just only their point of view. And I see some of the worst things that happened to them if I were in their shoes. And I feel that one of the worst things is your name always being synonymous with your captor. For those who don't know, before we even get into this, why are we talking about somebody by the name of Sherry Brooks? It's because allegedly Sherry Brooks orchestrated the murder of Vera Jo. And I want Vera Jo to stand up above just this portion of her life. But I must talk. And not just mention Sherry Brooks. I must talk in detail about Sherry Brooks. And I want to do it for two reasons. And the two reasons of why you would even want to make anything talking about the life and murder of someone. So number one of the reasons you want to do this, if you do not believe in ghosts, pretend that you believe in ghosts. And for those who believe in ghosts, why would the ghosts not rest? What do you think would keep them not at ease after their passing? Subjective to however you feel. I'm going to show you through this why I feel. In order to do that, I need to talk about Sherry Brooks. And number two, what reason to even cover someone's life and death is to learn from the mistakes that we all make as humans, to correct these issues, to show that it won't happen again. And for some reason, I continue to find cases to where not only are there sick individuals that will commit atrocious crimes, but the victim was failed by society too. By our structure of society, by our police department, by our child protective services. And if you watch my video on the Hart family, I'm ashamed to say you're about to hear something worse dealing with child protective services. So without further ado, let's start this with Sherry Brooks. Sherry Brooks was molested up until 3 years of age. So she was taken away from her father, who we shall call Big Chuck. Big Chuck is how he was known. Big Chuck is a horrible monster who would go on to do severely sick things. When people have sick parents, we want them taken away, put into an orphanage. Sherry was taken away along with her siblings. And from the ages of 3 years old until 17 years old, she traveled around in different orphanages. One we just discussed just so happened to be what Charles Manson was. That's not the only thing she has in common with Charles Manson, though. Through her travel, she spent time in Goshen, Ohio, which ironically is enough, a place where Charles Manson stayed 30 years prior to Sherry staying there. And again, we're only talking about locations. We're talking about Goshen. We're talking about the orphanage that was for boys that Charles went to and now she ended up going to. And I wonder what kind of stuff you can pick up from these places. How horrible was our orphanage system then or now? For there's another similarity she has with Charles Manson, and that's in their ability to control and manipulate humans to get them to do whatever they want them to do. I have never seen such a skill set, and even with knowing how to pick out the exact individuals to do their evil deeds for them. Nature versus nurture. How far does that go? Like, I wonder, like, were we born? Can you be born to be a serial killer? Can you be born to be crazy? Or is it something that's learned over time? Because at 17 years old, Sherry is going to leave the orphanage the first chance she gets, where she can make her own legal decisions. She doesn't leave Ohio. She doesn't go to Goshen. She goes right back to Findlay, Ohio, where she's from. And she moves right back in with Big Chuck. Big Chuck will go on not only to molest Sherry every single day, not only to beat her every single day, but he will make her clean the house naked. Is it hereditary? You know, because I'm looking at like DNA and their genes, you know, like he knows he can control her. He knows he can manipulate her. He tracked her down, even her siblings, who will go on to torment the entire town of Findlay as some thuggish group of wild individuals. This manipulation, this control to bring Sherry back, it lasted until one day she got arrested and she tried to jump out of the window of the courthouse. Kind of reminds me of Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy and her also had something in common. They didn't stay gone long. Ted Bundy ran to an abandoned house, got weak from not eating food, turned himself in. Big Chuck tracks her down. She goes back to live with him. He beats and he molests her again. She becomes very promiscuous during this time, sleeping with anybody in the town of Findlay. But she does something that most of us finds pretty horrific. She meets her first cousin, Danny Bixler. That is a name you're going to want to remember. Let's just put the stamp on it so you won't get confused later on. Danny Bixler Sr., who is her first cousin. You did not hear that incorrectly. She goes on not to only sleep with her first cousin, but they have a son by the name of Scotty. I'm sorry, start thinking about CPS. So as soon as I said Scotty, because as soon as I said Scotty, that made her a mother. And as soon as I thought of Sherry, of being a mother without even wanting to throw up, CPS took all 5 of her first children. Now, most of her first children she had by her first husband by the name of, last name of Maloney. That's where you get the Maloney from. So you have Brooks, you have Maloney, of her many aliases that she had. But some were from Danny, her first cousin. Each one of her 5 children were taken by CPS. Now, if you are a terrible parent, and we've seen situations where CPS has taken parents away from their children, but typically, from what I know, and maybe someone watching who is CPS worker, you can explain to me, I thought a parent does something bad, they take all the children away from them. End of story. Children away from horrific origins move on to a better place, which starts the repetitive cycle I'm telling you guys about. Only they took her children one at a time. One at a time. They were taking her children for things such as sexual abuse, repetition, Big Chuck to Sherry, Sherry to her children. Nature versus nurture. But they took Scotty. They took her son Michael. They took her son Joshua. Alleged abuse. And then this is where the obsession starts, as Sherry has a 4th child by the name of Maria. And with Maria, no one could hold Maria. No one could see her. Sherry would sleep in the room with her daughter for the first 6 months. Remember this. For the first 6 months, she would sleep with her baby girl in the room by herself. I want to skip a part just because I think it's important right here. When Scotty becomes an adult, he says that he doesn't think that Sherry can love a child without molesting them. He said that she said something similar to that you can't really love your child unless you sleep with them. And she's not talking about laying down to go to rest. So Sherry has a little baby girl by the name of Maria. We can hold this right here in my left hand. Now in my right hand, Verna, on July the 11th of 1986, has a little girl by the name of Vera Jo Regal. 2 young women, 2 baby little girls. And my hand sort of makes 2 doors. As both these couples will live next door to each other in a conjointed duplex. Verna with her little girl, Sherry with her little girl. What do you know about duplexes? What comes to mind with duplexes, right? I had a couple friends that lived around the corner from me. They lived in a duplex. It'd be all these houses, and I remember asking my mom, like, "Mommy, why are those 2 houses conjointed together like that?" You know, and I'm gonna make some assumptions here because just like her older 3 brothers, Maria was taken away from sexual abuse. Again, a 4th separate time that she's taken away. This is my assumption. If someone called the cops on me for beating or abusing my kids or my children, and I lived in a duplex, the first person I would assume told on me would be the person that's most likely to hear through the thin wall of a duplex. Resentment. Resentment can come. It can come from one woman, Sherry, who's upset that she lost her baby that she was obsessed with. Pure obsession. Because it was the first time she had a little girl. And they took her kid. So during these times, Sherry would go over to offer a lending hand to help out Verna, whether Verna asked or not, as Verna would go on to report that sometimes she'd be coming downstairs and Sherry would be in her place holding her baby. Weird, isn't it? Reminds me of The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, if you guys have seen that film. Husband was a gynecologist, and one of his patients come to see him, and he gets accused of sexual abuse. He goes on to commit suicide. So his wife then loses her baby. So her resentment is now towards the lady who told on her husband. But she plays nice around her to get into her home to steal her baby. And this, ladies and gentlemen, could be the ultimate reason that this is why Vera lost her life, doomed from the start as soon as she's a baby. But before she goes after Vera, she has unfinished business. Remember that little thing I told y'all about repeating and history repeating itself? And we've had some repetition so far. One of the things I told you is that Big Chuck would track down his children. Sherry didn't go without a fight. Sherry was hell-bent on tracking down every single child that they gave her. And she had one more daughter. It's her 5th child, but they took her before she even left the hospital. If you have an obsession with baby girls, and one was taken away from you, and then the next one was taken away before you even leave the hospital. So again, with our court system, what would happen as they would take Sherry's kids, they would pretty much give them to the same person. And through this small town, Sherry was able to manipulate this person into seeing her children, keeping in contact with her children, getting that mind control, that Charles Manson mind control in them. And if she gets to them well enough, as soon as they get of age, well, let me ask you, What did Sherry do when she got of age? Run back to Chuck, get her children to run back to her. And some of them did, to include Scotty. So keep in mind, Sherry was also arrested and sent to prison for molesting a 15-year-old girl. This 15-year-old girl had mental abilities. And mental abilities, I want to go back to Vera Jo Regal. Vera Jo was said to have been slow. That's what everybody called her, slow. But she clearly had mental disabilities as well. She was easily manipulated. Sherry was very proud that she spent 15 years tracking down each one of her children and getting them to come back to her. It was sort of some kind of a chest-bumping victory over this state. One would think that if someone were to flaunt how they were to beat the state, that the state would be more diligent and have a personal vendetta, at least, to try to put this person behind bars if they were to do anything crazy or illegal, but not in this town. And a correction. Sherry tracked down Michael and Joshua to get them to come back to her. And the way she did it was Scotty, when Scotty was taken away, he was raised by Sherry's mother. And he was very close with his grandmother. But that gave Sherry access to him. And this lady's arrested for sleeping with a 15-year-old girl, molesting her own children. You would let her have access to I don't want to leave anything to chance or to say that there's a way out for Sherry not doing these things, because when I say that someone told CPS that she was sexually abusing Maria, well, when they came over, they found blood in her diaper. So these weren't just allegations. These were real. These were real, and she still was able to go and have more children. If you're thinking, well, at least after Maria, she had, another little girl and they took her immediately to the hospital. That's just the first half of the story. So let's get into the sad life of Vera Jo, who at that time shall be known as Regal. She didn't have it so easy after leaving that duplex. For in this small town of Findlay, Ohio, Vera Jo Regal was sexually abused by her father at a very young age. Her and allegedly her sister as well too. Verna, Vera's mother, would go on to remarry, and allegedly her second husband, Vera's stepfather, would sexually abuse her as well too, although he has denied this, but everyone is saying that he did. As Vera is living in a small town of Findlay, all around the set of train tracks, not ever 10, 15 miles away, no matter where she lived her whole life, she was pretty much around these train tracks. And also around these train tracks were the Brooks family with Sherry. Sherry married Kevin Brooks. You want to choose people who are weak, and you want to choose people who you could easily influence. Sherry could easily influence Kevin Brooks. It gets so bad that Big Chuck comes back into the picture. Big Chuck allegedly would kick Sherry Brooks' husband out of the bed with her, make him sleep in another room, as Big Chuck would go in to sleep with his daughter. And I think you all know what I mean when I say the word sleep. But this is how much of a pushover this guy was, because he will be with Sherry for the rest of the time in this story. So when you ask, why didn't he help? He just let a man who's his wife's father kick him out of his bedroom to sleep with her. During the second marriage, they have 4 boys. Boys, not girls who she is obsessed with. They have 4 boys. I can't help but think lack of trying for so many children is to try to get a little girl. So they have Punky, Zachary, Garth, and Chucky. Punky is Kevin Jr. He's the oldest, so he's sort of in this second generation of children, the golden child. Keep in mind, It is not just a situation where we have husband, wife, and 4 boys. This is a situation where we have boys that are growing up into these stupid gangs. Repetition again. Because what happened to Sherry, older brothers, they became sort of a gang around town. Now Sherry has 4 sets of sons who become a gang around town.
How about you put the phone down? Huh? How about you put the phone down? Why? They're about to fight somebody with a phone in their hand. Well, I'm not fighting you. I heard some shit. Phone down. You can't do that? You don't think I want to do that? Nah.
Yeah, take this.
You gonna pull a fucking knife?
Get it.
Stop right here. So the kid sees himself surrounded by the Brooke brothers, and what does he do? He pulls a knife for self-defense, but they don't want him to have the knife in his hand. They want him to remove it so they can jump on him. Okay, keep going.
Why would this bigger man can sell this out? See, the bigger man will put the goddamn knife down. The bigger man will solve this problem. The bigger man wouldn't fucking stab nobody. Scotty, can you hand me that shovel? I ain't trying to kill nobody today.
Remember, Scotty is from a previous relationship with Sherry's first cousin. Scotty has a different father than these 4 Brooks brothers, and he's much older. However, Scotty is slow, as told from everyone else. So Scotty does exactly what they tell him to do. I want you to remember this for later. Let's keep going.
Sneak him, sneak him.
Bitch! Sneaker nigga! Come on, man! Get back.
Here, TJ, hold this, hold this,
Hey,
hold this. You want to talk shit about Punky?
Watch out, fast, I'll fuck you up, nigga. Back the fuck up.
Back up, Duffy.
I'm gonna tell you that right now. Break my window again, nigga. Bitch, I'll beat your ass.
What's up,
You stupid hoe, now get your little punk ass up and get out of my yard.
Talk shit about Brooks again, nigga.
That's how you sneak a nigga.
Sherry needed her boys to go out into the world, meet girls, get them pregnant, have baby girls, bring the baby girls to the house. That was her main goal, her main obsession. And while Punky didn't succeed in this, Zachary did. For Zachary Brooks went out, and his mom, who has this long history with Vera, who's an adult by this time, instructs Zachary to date Vera. Step 1 is to get Vera, who is easily manipulated, out of the home of her aunt and moved into the home with the Brooks. And again, it's not just husband and wife and 4 boys. There's Scotty coming over. There's other children coming over that were all taken away from her. There's kids and people around this house at all time of the day doing drugs, numerous gang fights. It was just a calamity of what I would only call fuckery at all times of the day at the Brooks home, with Kevin Brooke being a quiet guy who stood in a room minding his own business. So maybe Sherry wouldn't beat him up. I don't know. Vera's mother and sister showed some concern about Vera being in that house, and I want to tell the truth as I tell this story. Some people have painted Vera to be almost angelic-like, and to be honest, Vera was not angelic-like. Vera actually liked the gang stuff, but I want to make this crystal clear with the Zachary and all his brothers, you know, beating up people and being in gangs. When Vera first got there, you have to ask yourself why someone would like this stuff. Vera has severe mental disabilities, and in this life of these severe mental disabilities, she's been molested by allegedly two men who she was supposed to trust as her father figures. That's the only life that she has known. So if you take someone like that, they're not looking at gangs or fighting or anything. They're really looking at, these people pull me into their home, they like me, they protect me, they love me. But really they just love their womb. Or Sherry loved her womb. Zachary Brooks would eventually get Vera pregnant with her little girl by the name of Willadine Brooks. A very, very beautiful blue-eyed little girl. Babies are supposed to be the happiest moments of your life. They change, they give you focus. The signal that Willadine pretty much gave to Vera's life was, now you go from being protected and liked to being discarded. Vera almost had an obsession with her little girl, but in a good way. It was the one true pure love she actually has. And one thing I didn't mention was the age difference. Not mentally, as Vera was said to be on a mental capacity of that of a 12-year-old girl. But when she met Zachary, he was 13 years old. So Zachary is 13 years old with a live-in girlfriend that his mother instructed him to get. I would assume that Zachary knew that his mother really just wanted a baby. But if Zachary is this juvenile delinquent and he wants to play video games, he wants to run around and do all the stuff little kids do, he doesn't want to play house or be married, he doesn't care about Vera. She becomes a thorn in his side. She becomes the physical manifestation of why he can't go out and be a stupid teenager. Who could help Vera if her boyfriend doesn't want her there? And the person running the ship no longer cares about Vera. As a matter of fact, it would be awesome if Vera was gone forever. That way, I control my son, and he would have legal custody of Willadine, and I get to keep Willadine. So I'm going to make some assumptions too. This is just me putting myself in the mind frame of Vera. I'm going to assume that you just don't move someone in willingly and start beating the living crap out of them. I'd assume it happens small and gradually. I'd assume maybe one day Zachary got really, really mad and he hit Vera. Maybe one day he hit her again. Maybe one day Vera did nothing at all wrong and he got frustrated and he hit her again. Okay, normal little domestic violence. Then I'm going to assume Zachary wasn't even around. Maybe he's in another room. Maybe one of his brothers got mad. Maybe Vera was in the way. Maybe Willadine was crying too loud. And then I'm going to assume that somebody else hit Vera. And then the slow Vera, who doesn't defend or take up for herself, became the punching bag of the house. Party nights, drunk binges, humiliate and abuse Vera. All of this to me was gradually. She can't turn to Kevin. Kevin is in a room staying away. She can't turn to Sherry Brooks because guess what? Yes, repetition. Sherry, for the first 6 months, slept with Willadine in the bed with the door closed. But how do you go? How does one go directly from we beat on her sometimes to actual murder? Now, during these beatings and stuff, they wouldn't do it around Scotty when he came over. Scotty kind of had the sweets for Vera. He liked Vera and he didn't want anybody to harm her. So she kind of felt a little safe when Scotty was around. Unfortunately, an incident will happen with one of the brothers that's going to change everything, the whole landscape of the house. Punky, which is the oldest of the second set of kids. First set of kids, remember, is 5, trying to keep them all together as best as I could. 5 that were taken away, the 2 girls that were taken away, and then the 3 boys that was taken away. And then the second set was her 4 boys that she had by her husband, Kevin. The oldest, Punky, the beloved one that could do no wrong, he was walking down the street with his girlfriend, and he was struck and hit by a car. And this pretty much tore up Sherry. It's pretty much tore up the house at that point. It pretty much signaled the end of Vera's life for, I want to say, some unknown reason. They blamed Punky getting hit by a car on Vera. Punky was walking with his girlfriend. They blamed it on Vera. This was the 4th of July, 2010. Now things are going to start moving gradually from the 4th of July. That October, the Brooks moved now into the infamous house that's across the street from the Salvation Army, and they purchased a pet pig. And witnesses allegedly saw that Vera would have to sleep on the floor with this pig, around this pig's feces. Vera was basically a live-in punching bag at this time, who would go on from receiving beating after beating after beating from these people. There's a police report where Vera's sister had the cops to come out and try to remove Vera from the location. In February, just 1 month prior to Vera's death, the cops were called out as Vera had a broken nose. She was clearly beaten by someone. And a female police officer took Vera about 2 houses down the street and asked Vera who did this to her. As they asked Vera this, everyone was on the front porch watching. Her boyfriend, if you can call him that, since at this time Zachary had already started dating other women, dating other girls, and doing whatever he wanted to do, even in Vera's face, even bringing girls to the house. Sherry had Zachary go on the front porch with his little baby girl, Willadine. I know what that means. This is a silent threat that if you leave or if you tell the cops anything, we're going to kill your little girl. As soon as Vera saw Willadine, she told the cops nothing happened, while the cops stared at her broken nose. In a small town next to Findlay, Ohio, is Tiffin, Ohio. In this town, 2 small houses are next to each other. In one house, a 17-year-old girl is in the backyard by the name of Nicole Peters, and her neighbors next door is a young kid and an older male. Nicole is smoking a cigarette, and they get into an argument. Nicole is a feisty, crazy type that's eager to prove herself at all costs. So Nicole gets into an argument with these neighbors, and the argument escalates and it escalates and it escalates to where a physical altercation is about to take place. But Nicole does not have to worry about anything, for recently released from jail is 21-year-old Danny Bixler Jr. Yes, this is the son of Danny Bixler, who has a son by the name of Scotty with Sherry Brooks. Danny rushes to Nicole's aid and quickly frightens the 2 neighbors as he's willing to take their lives. This threat on these neighbors, with him just released from prison, he needs to flee, and now it's as if they're evil star-crossed lovers, an evil version of Romeo and Juliet, or better yet, they're more like natural-born killers, starting Woody Harrelson. They're more like natural-born killers, where they go on this murderous spree. But first, we need to get to safety, So where can we go to get to safety? He has a brother by the name of Scotty who lives in a house that everybody goes to in parties, even though it smells and there's a pig there and apparently a human slave he doesn't know about yet. So Danny and his girlfriend Nicole Peters are on their way to Findlay, Ohio to join Sherry Brooks. Now, there have been talks of murdering Vera in Vera's face without any respect at all. The beatings have escalated so badly. She pretty much stays in a room all day and they call her out to beat her. And the beatings almost always took place in Sherry's bedroom, the controller, the manipulator. In these talks of murdering Vera, in Vera's face, the boys in their little make-believe gang, they have a little cousin, and their cousin was hit by a train. When he was hit by a train, Sherry viewed it as he was pummeled into hamburger meat. This opened dialogue for them to go, what if Vera was hit by a train? If Vera was hit by a train, we'd be great, but there's one problem. How do you get Vera hit by a train without going to prison? I don't want my sons to go to jail, thought Sherry. So what do we do in this situation? It's as if Sherry's the mastermind in a comic book. She's Lex Luthor to Superman. She's the Joker to Batman. But what they need is a Bane. What they need is the Brawn. What they need is someone to push these ideas into fruition without any of her boys getting arrested. Walks in Danny Bixler Jr., who I can only assume she doesn't really care for. I'm looking at Danny's age. I'm looking at Scotty's age. I would assume that Danny Bixler Sr. probably left Sherry for someone else or got with someone else after her. She can't too much care about him. She's a narcissistic sociopath. But he'll get the job done. So let me give him cocaine. But let me give him real reasoning. What if I told Danny that Vera was walking with Punky and Vera pushed him in the road and Vera had Punky killed? You see, Sherry was mad at life. She was mad at society that her son Punky died. But you can't take it out on anybody because you don't have the power over anyone else except for feeble, weak-minded people who don't know any better. You don't have real power over people that can make change. So you go to your punching bag, Vera, and you explain to Danny Bixler Jr. after giving him loads and loads of drugs for an entire week. Now you need to get his girlfriend involved. This is even simpler. Jealousy. Tell Nicole Peters that Vera has been sleeping with Danny. And as I'm sad to report, that's a possibility that that was true, as there were reports that they forced Vera to sleep with everyone in the house. I don't think Vera would have put up a fight. Vera has been molested from her own father, allegedly her stepfather, pretty much everybody in her life. She would have went on along with it. So this final 7 days, this final week, they beat her mercilessly, and they beat her on that final morning, with Sherry admitting that she saw Nicole Peters beat Vera with a belt. Just beat her. When her son's jumping in. They leave the house, the boys leave the house, and they get into a physical altercation with other boys down the street. This brings the cops to their house. The police is there. Vera is upstairs in a room, bloody, beaten on her final day alive. And as Vera sits in the room, they de-escalate the situation with the other boys down the street and they leave. When the cops leave, Sherry says this is it. This is time to finally get Vera out of here. Two problems. Number one is Scotty, who has always had a secret crush on Vera, who has always been Vera's protector. I could only think of the film Alpha Dog to put myself into Vera's shoes when I think about what is taking place during her final hours alive. In the film Alpha Dog, which is also a true story, they kidnap a young teenage boy and they leave him all day with one of the captors, while the other captors go out. The captor that they leave him with becomes his friend. He really likes the guy. So as long as he's with this captor, he feels safe that no harm can happen to him. But little does he know that the other captors are plotting his murder. They're going to take him up this mountain and end his life. But when they take him up the mountain, they take him with the one that he feels safe and comfortable with. So when they get up the mountain, he's joking, he sees no danger. And then he sees his own grave. And when he sees his own grave, he turns and he looks at the guy like, please don't let them kill me, please. Panic ensues. You're in danger. And I remember seeing that part and my heart was jumping through my chest when I saw that film, to just have your trust in someone. So I think of Vera and I think of her trust in Scotty. I think of Scotty. I think of him shaking. I'm thinking of him nervous because he knows that they're really going to try to kill Vera. They take Scotty upstairs and they isolate him and they threaten him and say, if you get involved, we will kill you too. Later, Scotty will tell the cops that Danny told him this, but it wasn't Danny. It was Zachary. So Danny and Nicole leave the house with Vera for her final walk. And Sherry's nickname is Sugar Babe, as a lot of people know. She said that Vera's final words were, "Good night, Sugar Babe." I don't believe that at all. You don't say something like that when you're full of fear, when you're assuming that your life is coming to an end and there's nothing that you can do to stop it. So narcissistic sociopaths, they lie when it makes them look better. And it makes her look better to say that Vera wasn't afraid. I heard two stories of this. I heard that they dragged Vera in a wagon to the train track. I heard this from credible people in the town of Findlay, Ohio, but I could not confirm this. I don't think for one moment she said goodbye, Sugar Babe. I think she was worried about that walk. The walk that I have taken mentally in my head a billion times. This 9-minute walk from Sherry Brooks' house to the tracks. I know it like the back of my head. Salvation Army right across the street. Walk east 2 blocks and you're at the tracks. The murder taking place. Just turn right. Walk about a good 5 minutes. But you didn't take this easy route, Danny. No. You would have been seen too easy to take that route. I have to bring you back some. You left the Salvation Army and you probably turned right on Jefferson. Jefferson is a small one-way road with trees and enough darkness to cover anybody going down it. And you walk down Jefferson with Vera. I believe you walked down Jefferson until you left the housing and you got to the light blue factory, which would have provided you cover and darkness. And I believe you walked until you reach the other side of the blue factory. And it is of my belief that you turned through that cut, which on the other side of the factory puts you right where the murder took place on the track without anyone seeing you guys walk down it. And I believe you did that because it's what I would have done. And I believe right at this spot in the back of this factory is where someone as emotional as Nicole Peters, who believed this lie that Vera wanted to sleep with you, probably started punching and hitting her again. This darkness covering the back of this factory. I believe you guys probably pushed her in the back and hit her. I believe you guys probably at this point, because you could have killed her right there at the factory, started to let her know she's about to die. I believe when you got to those tracks, Vera was crying as if there was no tomorrow. What was first? Was it the deep slash across her neck as you tried to decapitate her? Or was it the multiple blood-spattering, blunt force, blunt from a knife? Trauma caused by Nicole Peters as she stabbed her repeatedly. Did she cry for Willadine? Did she beg you to stop? This cold night that you ripped her clothing off, making her naked, and I couldn't figure it out, but Sherry Brooks helped me on that one. And she volunteered information to the police that, hey, maybe they took her clothes off because the knife was dull. But you can't just leave poor Vera laying on the track, dying. You must stick to the plan. So you lay Vera bleeding out, naked, on top of a track with the hopes that the next train that rides by turns her into hamburger meat. And you walk away. You walk away. Can she hear the footsteps? You're naked. You're laying on top of a rail and you hear the faint, very low sound of a train. What do you think? You know that you're going to die and there's nothing that's going to stop it. But how do you die? Do you die and no one know who you are, or do you take the very last will, the very last inch of life in your body to remove yourself from this track? Can you imagine? Can you put yourself there? What would it take to muster the last strength to remove yourself off this track?
Police Department, please.
Hello, this is Chris with CSX Railroad.
Yes.
Hey, we just got a report that we have a train stopped over near Central Parkway, right in between there across the Blanchard River.
Okay.
We got to report that we have a train stop right now because they see a naked female body laying in the middle of the track. Appears to be deceased.
Danny and Nicole go to a party where they do the same things a lot of young idiot killers do. They talk. They're not keeping up with the Joker's plan. The Joker had a plan set in place for everybody who knew that Vera was going to be murdered, to include Kevin Brooks Sr., who said, just make sure I'm not there when this all goes down. Sherry Brooks' plan was simple. It's the plan that everyone uses. A black guy did it. However, guess who identified Vera's body? The train reached Vera. Vera's body stood on her side 12 inches from the ground. The bottom of the train is 13 inches. 1 inch saved her, keeping all the evidence intact. With the evidence intact, the police officer took pictures, and they took these photos back to the police station. And at the police station, it's the same female officer that saw Vera months before with a broken nose. And she was able to look at these photos and say, oh my God, I know who this is, which led them right back to the Brooks home. Can you imagine how it feels to see a nude, deceased woman, dead, as bloody as the last time you saw her, and you know you could have done something about it? When everybody knows a plan, you're easily caught. So with Danny telling everybody and Nicole, the police arrested the 2 individuals involved. The police arrested Zachary for obstruction of justice, along with many others, because of the lie that they said about the black guy. However, because they did not read Nicole Peters her rights, Miranda rights, she got off. To this day, she hasn't been arrested for the murder of Vera. She has only been arrested for conspiracy. The first time I've ever in my life heard a conspiracy with one person, because Nicole Peters named every single person involved, down to Sherry Brooks, who conspired with her to kill Vera.
Daniel Bixler, Shannon Brooks, Zachary Brooks, Garth Brooks, Sherry Brooks, and I agreed to kill Vera Jo Regal on March 26, 2011. We agreed to do this because Shannon Brooks said Vera Jo Regal caused her to miscarry. Zachary Brooks got a knife and gave it to Daniel Bixler. Daniel Bixler and I made Vera leave with us. We walked Vera to the railroad tracks where Daniel stabbed her several times. Afterward, Daniel and I agreed to throw the knife in the river. All of this happened in Findlay, Hancock County, Ohio.
The accusation that it was the Brooks plan and them to do all this, where's the charges? Why are they not in prison? Why are they not where Nikki and Danny are going? I want to know. If she and Daniel are making these allegations, then why are they not in prison?
We believe Nicole should get the maximum sentence the law can give to her. Plus, Vera Jo has a little girl now That little girl has to grow up without her mother.
I know, no amount, I'm sorry, will justify or bring Vera back. But this is me making amends and taking responsibility for my actions. And again, I am truly sorry.
I'm hoping she thinks every day about what she did to Vera. Every day. I hope she sits there in that prison while she's there and she thinks about Vera every day of her life.
No charges have been filed. How can you conspire with yourself? How can only one person get charged in a conspiracy? And Danny pled guilty to murder. There will be multiple arrests in the future after this date of everybody, to include Sherry herself. Multiple arrests, but none to this very day for the murder of Vera Jo. I want to get some more disturbing things out of the way. When the police arrived at Sherry Brooks' home, they removed everyone from the house to be questioned, except for one person. Sherry Brooks, the mastermind behind all of this, was left home with baby Willadine while everyone else was questioned. One of Sherry's sons will go on to have a little baby girl. That's with Vera to this very day. Vera isn't a supermodel. Vera isn't the daughter of a sheriff. Vera is just some slow girl in the town that was done wrong, and they have the people who was there on site and committed the murder. Even though one of them, Nicole, isn't getting charged for the murder, even though blood splattered on her body, all over her clothes, that could only come from being there on the site, from her inflicting the stab wounds. All this evidence, and the cops do nothing. Sherry will stop at nothing to track down anyone that she feels belongs to her family. However, there is some good news, as Willadine did not fall through the cracks as everyone else who's escaped Sherry. She did not go to the same person as her other children went to. Totally anonymous. Through the struggles and hardship of Vera's one life she had to live, being born, sent to a duplex with a narcissistic sociopath for a neighbor that's had her eyes on her from birth, to a father who has molested her, a stepfather who allegedly molested her, to moving in with the worst family imaginable, to going through numerous amounts of torture that I purposely have left out of this video. You're more than welcome to go and look up that information yourself. The sacrifice of a mother paid off. Willadine is free. Her name isn't Willadine anymore, and she's going to a very, very prominent family. The cops are never going to charge anyone else in this case, not even Sugar Babe herself. For they see this as a waste of time, a waste of resources. They look at the Brooks family as a joke. They are a joke, but they are also a threat that needs to be removed from society. Also paying for your sins that you have done in this country. I won't waste any more time going through numerous amounts of arrests that has occurred since Vera's death of everybody involved in this family. Because I don't want to end this video like that. I want to end this video different than my other videos. I asked you guys at the beginning if you believed in ghosts, or if you didn't, you pretend this one time that ghosts exist. What would be the one thing that they would have wanted? So what would be the one thing that Vera would have wanted in this situation? Willadine is free. She will never have to worry about harm coming to her from the Brooks family. So I say, well, what's the one thing that's really torturing, that's plaguing Vera? And I got it. It's her name. Due to another documentary that came out on this situation, a lot of people are confused and they call Vera Sugar Babe. Can you imagine? Can you imagine being called the name of the person that ended your life? Can you imagine being mistaken for that person? Her name is not Sugar Babe. However, there's another name Vera wanted to get rid of. There was another John, Steve John, who came along as Vera could not afford a tombstone, Vera's mother, and he wanted to help the family out. He wanted to give a tombstone to honor Vera. However, Vera Jo still bore the name Vera Jo Regal, which is the name of her biological father that molested her. So here we are again with a name I don't think that she would have wanted. And her mother agreed. So that's why you see on her tombstone it lies Vera Jo MESSERSMITH. And I think that's the one thing that Vera Jo wants to be remembered for. She just wants her name back. So instead of ending my videos as I always do, we're going to end this on a lighter note. We're going to make Vera happy. You guys ready?
Vera Jo MESSERSMITH.
Vera Jo MESSERSMITH.
Vera Jo, we love you.
Exact date.
Vera Jo, rest in peace, sweet girl.
You're awesome, Vera Jo.
Vera Jo MESSERSMITH.
Vera Jo MESSERSMITH.
Vera Jo MESSERSMITH. You will never be forgotten.
Vera Jo MESSERSMITH.
Vera Jo MESSERSMITH.
Vera Jo MESSERSMITH.